Welcome to the final session of Church Planted. And let me say this as we begin. Thank you so much for being a part of this course. I've had so much fun teaching this content, preparing this content, developing this content. I can't wait to see how God continues to use it for his glory alone. And maybe it's different for each one of you, but there is a reason you are here right now watching and engaging with the Church Planted course. And I pray that this is a partnership in the gospel to see churches planted to the ends of the earth. And I want to remind you of the end goal for this class. And we mentioned this all the way at the beginning, and I want to remind you as we end. The end goal is for each participant to gain a deeper understanding of church planting and leadership development, a greater passion for church planting and leadership development, and a clear next step. Let me emphasize that, a clear next step for their involvement, so for your involvement in church planting and leadership development. And so I want to ask you as we even start part 10, what is your next step in taking this content and applying it and using it to see churches planted? Maybe you need to go through it again. Maybe you need to take someone with you through it next time. Maybe you need to gather a small group of people or leaders in your life or in your church and take people through it. My hope is that you have a deeper understanding. I hope this is true for each of you. A greater passion. Again, I pray this is true, and a clear next step. And I can't wait to see how God uses this content far and wide for his glory in the planting of churches that plant churches to the ends of the earth. Our content in this final session together is the third step on the leadership pipeline. And so we're going to talk about leading teams and building teams in this session together. And I want to recap just quickly our discussion of the pastor leader. So pastoral leadership and really the leadership pipeline up to this point. So most of the time, people view leadership, again, as someone at the top leading those who are beneath them. However, we never saw Jesus lead like this. Jesus did not lead in such a way where he was at the top telling others what to do. Jesus was a servant leader and a directional leader. In fact, I would argue he was the greatest servant leader ever to live and the greatest directional leader ever to live. And bringing those two things together, he is our model for both directional leadership and servant leadership. And we introduced pastoral leadership as being both servant and directional. When both of these lanes come together, we have what we're calling maximum kingdom impact. However, the problem is that none of us are great in both lanes. God has designed us to be either more servant leader oriented or more of a directional leader. And the goal is to know which lane God has designed you to lead in and then to build a team around our weaknesses. And so again, it might look something like this. Your strengths plus the strengths of your team, which hopefully are your weaknesses, equal maximum kingdom impact. We build on this by discussing the APEST model of leadership found in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 12. And so the job description of a pastor, again, is to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And God has called you to do this in one of the following ways: apostolic leadership, prophetic leadership, evangelistic leadership, shepherd leadership, or teaching leadership. And the second step after we learn our strengths, again, is to build a team around our weaknesses. And so this is the first step to building a team, is to develop what we call a leadership pipeline. And just to remind you of the leadership pipeline, a leadership pipeline is a trajectory of leadership, starting with the ability to lead yourself and ending with the ability to lead movements. And these 5 steps to the leadership pipeline are leading yourself, leading people, leading teams, leading leaders, and leading movements. And so we can take a deep breath. And as we talk about today's content, I want to talk about building and leading teams, this third step on the leadership pipeline. And so the 3 steps, I'm going to call these 3 steps to leading a team, are very simple. The 3 steps to building and to leading a team are to recruit, to resource, and then to release. To recruit, to resource, and then to release. I would submit to you that everything on the topic of how to build teams falls within one of these three categories. You're either recruiting people for your team, resourcing people on your team, or releasing people to build their own teams. And so what I want to do is I want to start in so many ways with our conversation on recruiting. And so the first stage in building and leading a team is to look around and recruit people for your team. The first thing you want to do is you want to identify the positions that you need. So when you're building a team, you want to take out a sheet of paper or open up a document on your computer and then write down what you think you need for every position that you need to fill for your team. Write out these positions. I don't know what it is, but write them out. Think about this in terms of your context in your team. In this stage, we need to first decide on that. That's why we spent so much time on the content leading up to this point. The first step of building a team is not knowing how to build a team, but again, it's knowing yourself. Because if you're going to put yourself in the strengths seat, you're going to begin to identify people for your team that begin to overshadow your weaknesses. And in many ways, it's going to balance it out and create what we call maximum kingdom impact. So I've seen this over and over again where guys are in the wrong position, in the wrong lane, who are building teams in vain because they don't even first know how God has designed them to lead. But once you know how God's designed you to lead, then you can get in the right lane of leadership, and now you can lead in your strengths. And then you can build a team around your weaknesses. And again, so identify the positions that you need. That's the first step. And so if we were going to do this together in the area of church planting, we might write out all the team members that we need. We need a kids person. We need a worship person. We need an audio, video, tech person. We need an outreach person, a finance person, maybe an administration person. And again, this is going to be different for whatever context that you find yourself in. But you can do this for any team that you're trying to build, any team that you're trying to lead. You can identify every position that you need. And again, you might fill many of them at first. You might put your name in 5 out of the 10 team members that you need. But ultimately, what you want to be doing is replacing yourself as you recruit people to be a part of your team. So as you're identifying the positions that you need, and as pastors, you're going to be doing a lot of the work yourself. You're going to be preaching, you're going to be praying, you're going to be protecting the church. But after this, after you know what positions you need, the second point that you need to do is second thing you need to do is you need to write a job description for each position. And so again, if we're going to look at this as identifying the positions you need for the team that you're leading, then you're going to write a job description for each position. And you're going to take out a sheet of paper, you're going to open up a document on your computer, and I'm going to encourage you to write a 1-sentence job description that is memorable, that's action-oriented, that defines their wins, and it gives them everything that they need for success as you're writing these job descriptions. And so for everybody on a team, they need to know what it is, a summary of what they are doing. So you need a title of this position. You need a 1-sentence job description that's memorable and action-oriented. Objectives for this position on your team. In other words, what are they going to be doing? Maybe you need to put a time frame for this position. Is it 6 months, 12 months? Is it indefinite? And then a commitment sentence where they can sign. Because I have come to believe, and through experience, when someone signs their name to a sheet of paper, it means their commitment level is even greater. And so again, let's use small group leader as an example here and walk through a sample job description. So the title is small group leader. 1-sentence job description might be something like this: lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus. This is very memorable and very action-oriented. The objectives of the small group leader, again, might be lead a small group session 1 time a week for 2 hours. Grow your group to 18 people. Identify an apprentice who can be your co-leader. Multiply your group and send out your co-leader to lead their own group. The time frame for this small group leader might be 12 months, so January to December. And then a commitment sentence might look something like this: I, Greg Gibson, commit for 12 months to faithfully lead a small group, grow the group, identify a leader, and multiply the group. So in other words, their commitment sentence is telling you what they're going to do for this position, whether it's paid or volunteer, to be a success. And the third thing that you need to do is, after you identify the positions that you need and write job descriptions, is to identify the people that you need for these positions. And so after you identify the people that you need for these positions, you're going to then make the ask. And so what I do whenever I have my piece of paper out and I'm writing the positions that I need and I've got my job description written, I am thinking through my memory Rolodex, the relationships that I have, the people in my spheres of influence, and I'm trying to match perfectly the strengths of this person to the strengths of this job description, and then I go and make the ask. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's talk quickly about how we identify people for these positions. After I write out every position that I need, I begin by putting names beside each position. Again, very practical, very simple, and I encourage you to do this exercise every single time you're attempting or trying to build a team. You don't want to just begin putting names beside these positions, but as I said a moment ago, you want to put names beside these positions whose strengths match the position. That's why we do the hard work of knowing ourselves first, then building a team right around our weaknesses. That's why the first task of the pastor is always to equip the saints for the work of ministry. Because when you equip your people for ministry, you go from a doer to an equipper to a leader. And that's where we want to be. We want to be equippers and leaders and live in those lanes. You want to know yourself, you want to know your strengths, you want to know your lanes, and then you want to teach your people the exact same thing. And when you're recruiting people to your team, you want to recruit people that you, in many ways, have developed. This is maybe more of a perfect world, but you want to recruit people that you've helped them learn their design. You've helped them serve in their gifting. You've helped recruited people for their teams, or equipped people to recruit people for their teams that they are building and that you're building and leading. I'm telling you, in this way, it becomes so much easier when you're recruiting people for your teams that you, in fact, have already developed. And when people know their design and how God created them, they are more eager and ready to jump onto a team because they know how to use their strengths to make the team better. And when they do this, they are leading out of an overflow of what God is doing in their life and not out of an emptying, or a draining position or draining spot that you've asked them to be a part of. And then we make the ask, okay? We make the ask. And here's how I do this. This is step 4 of the recruiting process. I usually ask people to go get coffee or to meet with me or to jump on a FaceTime or a Zoom call, and I present them with the vision for what we're trying to accomplish. And then I mention all the positions we need for the team. And then I tell this person how they would fit on the team with their strengths. And it's an easy matchup for their strengths and the position that we need to fill. And then I just ask a very simple question. I say, will you be on the team and fill this position? Friends, it is as easy as that. At this point, I'm presenting them with the job description. I read through it with them. After I make the ask and read the job description, I ask them to pray about being a part of the team, and I tell them that I will circle back with them, or I will give them a phone call in a few days to ask them about their decision. So after 2 or 3 days, I usually call them to inquire about their decision, and most of the time, I'm telling you this, almost 100% of the time, people join the team because I did the hard work of preparation beforehand. And they can see immediately the value they add when I affirm their strengths, present them with a job description, and then ask them to be on the team. So again, this is building teams and leading teams 101. But after we recruit people to be on our team, and I think that was a helpful step-by-step process. After we do this, then we are going to resource people to be on our team. And the very easy, most simplistic way that I can teach you to resource your team members is to have an onboarding process and training, and to have an ongoing process for your training, how you are continually equipping the people on your team. Because you don't just want to recruit people to be on your teams and then release them, but you want to have an onboarding training and an ongoing training. And let's talk just for a moment about this stage. And so these are two things that you want to do, and the first is obvious, but the second thing is where I see many pastors and honestly many leaders fail. These two things in the resourcing stage, again, are onboarding training and ongoing training. And I see people do an okay job of the onboarding training, but I see pastors and church planners do a terrible job when providing continuous ongoing training, because it takes time. It means you have to be in relationships with people. You have to schedule it out and put it on the calendar. It means that you are also growing as a leader yourself so that you can take people along in your leadership journey as well. But the first thing you want to do when someone joins your team is train them. This is ongoing training, right? This is what you're doing with onboarding. And how you're providing this onboarding training. So when you train people who are coming onto your team, you're providing them with the resources, knowledge, and skills necessary to do the job you have recruited them for. You never want to recruit someone for your team and just release them to do the work of the ministry. This would be a recipe for disaster. So when I train someone for a position on a team that I'm leading, this is called, again, the onboarding season. I have a clear start and end to this season, and I verbalize it with this person. It's in this season that we make sure each person on our team has everything they need to succeed. And so, again, to use our small group leader example, during the resourcing stage, it might look something like this for incoming small group leaders. You have a small group leader training weekend that you require new small group leaders to attend. You might give them training material ahead of time that they can prepare to come to the training for, or you might give them training material that they can go back to after the small group leader training weekend. You might give them the content they will be leading weeks and weeks in advance. And when you're doing this, you're giving them enough time to prepare. There are so many ways to provide an onboarding training, but I'm telling you, the best way to do it is in relationship and in person with your leader. And then secondly, you want to provide ongoing training and equipping. And here's what we have done in the past, both in the churches I've planted in Washington, D.C., here in Tennessee, and even in Ukraine. We break ongoing training down into weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And here's what we do to be very practical for you. For ongoing training for the teams that I lead, I send a weekly email. This is the weekly part. Monthly, I provide a monthly coaching session, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And then quarterly, we do team nights where everybody's together relationally. And then yearly, we do what we call a yearly volunteer training conference. And this is more training and still relational, still fun, still inspiring, but giving them more resources to be more and better effective leaders. So again, it is vital that you provide ongoing training for any team that you are leading. And if you're not providing ongoing training, then you are setting your team up to fail. And it's sort of like if you're the coach of a team, but you never practice, and you just show up to the game and you're ready to play the game. How in this scenario are things going to go? Well, it's going to be a tragic failure. Everything is going to go wrong. You didn't prepare your team, you didn't onboard them well, and you're not providing any type of ongoing practice. It's the same way when you're leading a team. This is the same thing when it comes to providing ongoing training for any team that you lead. Have an ongoing training plan for your team, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And then the final stage of building teams and leading teams is the releasing stage. So the release stage for your team to actually do the work of the ministry. And for our release stage, again, very simple. What we want to do is we want to provide coaching for their work, and we want to celebrate their wins. And when you do this, you're going to see your teams flourish, you're going to see your teams grow, and you're going to see your leaders be appreciated like never before. And let's talk about that for a moment, this releasing stage. So when you release your team to do the work of the ministry, which is actually Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 12, you are releasing them with these two things that you're doing, coaching and celebrating. And when you're coaching them, you're releasing your team to do the work of ministry. You never want to micromanage them. You want to give your team clear indicators of success, as mentioned in their job description, which we mentioned a moment ago. And then you want to provide the right teaching, the right training, so they have everything they need to succeed. You want to give them the goal, but you don't want to tell them how to get there. And again, you're not simply releasing them without any oversight at all. This is where you begin to function as a coach to your team. And every good team, I want you to see this, every good team has a great coach. Coaches give clear goals, provide the right system and structure, give the feedback when needed, and relationally celebrate the wins. And when you release your team to do the work of the ministry, you do so now as a gospel coach in their life. And then secondly, you want to celebrate your team all of the time. A good team leader is a great celebrator. In fact, I would say a good leader is a great celebrator in all of life. You should always be finding things to celebrate about your team. You should be always finding things to celebrate about the people who are on your team. And when you celebrate your team, especially your volunteer teams, friends, you are showing them that you notice and you care. You're going to celebrate the wins. You're going to celebrate the things that you are measuring as success. And sometimes just celebrating your team just because you can celebrate them. And I want you to hear this, and I truly and fully believe this with all my heart, is that a celebration culture is a contagious culture that people want to be a part of. When people feel valued and when people feel celebrated, it's a sticking point for teams, for people that want to be a part of good teams. A celebration culture is a contagious culture. And friends, Christians, as followers of Jesus, we have the most to be celebrating in our life. We were once dead in our sin. Now we're alive in Christ. I can't say it enough. A celebration culture is a contagious culture. And so let's conclude by being reminded of the process for building teams. Building teams, I hope you see, is actually very, very easy. It's a 3 simple step process: recruit, resource, release. In the recruiting phase, we're identifying positions that we need. We're writing job descriptions for each position. We're identifying people for these positions, and then we're making the ask. And then in the resource stage, we're providing onboarding training, and then secondly, ongoing training. And then finally, in the release stage, we are providing ongoing coaching, and we are going to celebrate as many times and in many ways that we possibly can the people on our team for any occasion that we can possibly celebrate them. And so, friends, thank you for joining me for the course, Church Planted. Let's get this course out as far and as wide as possible for the glory of God and the fame of Jesus alone. And for more information about all things Salt Movement, go to saltmovement.org.